All right, back here on HQ, it is Tuesday, which means it is time to hit the waiver wire in fantasy. What quarterbacks, running backs, wideouts, and more. Which should you be targeting, adding? So let's send it over to our experts, Jamey Eisenberg and Dave Richard, who are sick of hearing me complain about my fantasy team, so I won't do it. I'll just kick it over to y'all.
Jacqueline, we love hearing you complain. That means you're still playing in your fantasy league, and that's what's important right now. It's week 14. We know this is the last week, Dave, for a lot of fantasy leagues because the playoffs start next week. Last week with teams on a bye, 4 teams are not playing this week. Got San Francisco, New England, the Giants, and Carolina all off, so not ideal, because obviously you'd like to have your rosters fully intact. But we are here to help with the waiver wire moves that you need. And this list of quarterbacks, Dave, I mean, these guys are league winners. You're going to get one of these guys off waivers, and they're just going to help you glide right into the playoffs.
You sound like a little bit of sarcasm.
No, not at all. Let's just show the list. Show the list.
The top name is Marcus Mariota, so unless this is like a 3 QB league, then yeah, this is not the prettiest list of all. But Marcus Mariota has delivered at least 22.7 fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games. And he's taking on the Vikings. That's a winnable game for Washington, given the matchup. So maybe there's something there. Maybe there's something there with Tyrod Taylor. He's given us at least 20 fantasy points in 2 of his 3 starts this year. He's taking on Miami. That defense has gotten better against the run than they have against the pass. So maybe Tyrod Taylor is somebody you can go to. And really, the only way you're going to either of these quarterbacks is if you're streaming and you're stuck. Like you had Brock Purdy, you had Jackson Dart, you can't have them this week. You're waiting for Jaden Daniels to come back, or you have Drake May and you didn't have a backup ready to go for Drake May. You will pay that price this week with guys who might be able to get you to 20 fantasy points, like Mariota, Tyrod Taylor. Also on the list, CJ Stroud. That's more long-term. I wouldn't trust him this week. And Tyler Shuck did give us over 20 fantasy points against the Dolphins in week number 13.
2 of his last 3 over 21 fantasy points for Tyler Shuck. And good matchup this week against Tampa Bay, as we just saw Jacoby Brissett, another guy that if he's out there, look, you see this list of quarterbacks, go see if Jacoby Brissett's out there. Trevor Lawrence could still be out there on your waiver wire. There are some guys that might be a little bit better than the list that we just showed you, but those are the guys generally that we're talking about in leagues available on CBS. All right, let's get to the running backs here, and another list that's a little questionable, but there are some guys that have some short-term and long-term appeal. And again, similar to the quarterbacks, Jordan Mason may still be on your waiver wire. Zonovan Knight may still be on your waiver wire. These guys could be starting options for you this week simply because of the scenarios, specifically with Jordan Mason, Aaron Jones dealing with a shoulder injury. So you see Chris Rodriguez at the top of the list. And he is very touchdown dependent. He does not have any involvement in the passing game. 1 catch so far on the season, only 2 targets on the season, and he's been in that 11 to 15 carry range. So you are looking at a guy that's most likely a flex at best. Hopefully we're going to see a situation where Washington is playing with a lead and being able to dominate time of possession. But this Minnesota run defense, very Jekyll and Hyde. So just keep that in mind that if Rodriguez does not score, we saw him have a very solid game against Miami and Madrid in week 11, but it was only 7 PPR points. He just does not help you if he does not find the end zone. But thankfully, again, touchdown in 3 of his last 4 games. The next name on that list was Devin Singletary. If you are looking long-term, I like Singletary the best, actually, of all the running backs on this list because of right now the uncertainty of Tyrone Tracy dealing with that hip injury that he suffered in Monday night's game against the Patriots. Singletary, 17 PPR points or more in 2 of his last 3 games, was great last night against New England. So he could be a potential league winner as at least a number 2 running back or flex. When you see the other names on this list, from Blake Corum on down, most of these guys are handcuffs that could be potential league winners if an injury occurs. We got a little bit of a scare for the Rams against the Panthers when Kyron Williams left the game, but he came back in. Corum had 81 rushing yards and a touchdown. He's had at least 7 carries in each of his last 6 games. So he's going to be somebody who's going to get some work, but also could potentially help you win your league if, in fact, an injury does occur. And then you see Michael Carter and Tyjae Spears. These are potential flex options, 7 to 8 PPR points on a given week. Carter much more involved in the passing game in the last 3 weeks. Just keep an eye on Trey Benson and Mari DiMercado. Both guys could return from injury. All right, now we get to the positions I think that are going to help a lot of people, Dave. We're talking about wide receiver and tight end. Let's get to wide receiver first here because, in my opinion, there is a guy on this list that could be an absolute league winner, potentially this week, but definitely in the fantasy playoffs.
Who's that?
Mike Evans.
Of course. The guy has been a fantasy stud for a long, long time, and the fact that he's going to potentially be back should make fantasy owners excited, and he's available in 55% of CBS Sports leagues. That's pretty incredible, all said and done, and you can stash him on your IR spot until he does come back. I don't know if you can use him this week because We think he's just going to start practicing this week and they ramp him up. So he might not help you now, but he could definitely be a difference maker down the stretch for your fantasy team. The rest of this list is pretty deep, Jamey. I think you can potentially go after other positions and not necessarily prioritize the other wide receivers, and there's some caveats with them. For example, Greg Dortch, my favorite right now, but Marvin Harrison Jr. has to miss week 14 in order for Greg Dortch to come through. 16 or more PPR points in his past 2 games without Marvin Harrison. When Harrison plays, he's at 9.9 PPR points or fewer. I'm ranking him as if Marvin Harrison Jr. is not going to play this week. Jaden Higgins has been pretty steady for Houston. Tough matchup this week, but he's been consistent. 11.5 PPR points or more in 4 of his past 6 games. And then you've got some other interesting names. There's Adonai Mitchell, there's Isaac Tesla, there's Devon Vele. They're all worth a dart throw, and you might need to start 1 or 2 of them if you're just desperate between the bye weeks or losing Amon-Ra St. Brown, other wide receivers that aren't going to play. My favorite from that group is Mitchell, because I think he's still going to see in that neighborhood of 6+ targets. He's seen 19 targets in his past 2 games, both with Tyrod Taylor. He's turned that into 10 catches, 144 yards and a touchdown. Not many mistakes from him. We know that he made a ton of mistakes when he was with Indianapolis. It's not a sexy offense, but it's one that's going to throw a lot, and he looks like he's the #1 wide receiver for the Jets for however long that Garrett Wilson's out. And to Isaac Tesla's point, he had a huge opportunity last week, a 97% route run rate. Gets a great matchup this week against Dallas, so there could be an opportunity for him. We just haven't seen it from him yet, so it's a little bit of a leap of faith. I know that that's one that you're buying into.
Very excited about Tesla. This is all ceiling, no floor. So it's one of those that I think if he hits, he's going to hit big. If he misses, he's probably not going to be very involved because he hasn't had more than 2 targets in a game. But he's had 3 touchdowns so far on the season with limited opportunities. And now there's no Amon-Ra St. Brown. There's no Sam Laporta. There's most likely no Brock Wright or Khalif Raymond. So the chance for him to be on the field, playing a lot, and to your point last week, yes, he was involved, but now the game plan for him, or to at least involve him in the game plan, that's the hope, and the matchup's great. The score should be, very high-scoring game between the Cowboys and the Lions. So this is the type of player I think that could be a huge difference maker for you, but could also be somebody that leaves you a little bit wanting for.
And I should have mentioned this from the jump when it comes to wide receivers. Double check for Alec Pierce, Christian Watson, Chris Godwin. They're all rostered highly, but still 20% plus of CBS Sports leagues, they're out there. So just double check. Make sure they're rostered. Those wide receivers I'd rather have than anybody we've been talking about for the last 2 minutes.
Yeah, those 10-team leagues, you might find those guys available. And same with tight end. You might find somebody like Dalton Kincaid, who's got the best matchup of anybody on the table. He's missed the last 3 games with a hamstring injury, but could return for this week's game against Cincinnati. But at the tight end spot, we're looking at somebody who has been playing well. I know Jacqueline's excited about this. Is Brenton Strange of the Jaguars. His last 4 healthy games, 10 or more PPR points coming off a game where he just scored a touchdown last week for the Jaguars against the Titans. Easy matchup against the Colts. He plays the Colts actually twice in his last 4 games, but you're looking at somebody who's much more involved now with Trevor Lawrence and Parker Washington dealing with a hip injury. So Strange could be, as you see here, a top 10 tight end for all of us, top 5 guy for me in my rankings this week. Also look at Dalton Schultz. I know it's not an easy matchup for him this week, taking on a very good Kansas City defense, but he's been 11 or more PPR points in 4 of his last 5 games. The one where he didn't do that was against Buffalo. They just dominate tight ends. So you're looking at Schultz as a borderline must-start guy rest of way, and potentially the same thing for Harold Fannin. We look at guys that get to that 8 or 9 PPR point range and typically can live in that area. Well, he's been there 4 of his last 5 games. A couple of those with Dylan Gabriel, a couple of those with Shedeur Sanders. You're looking at a situation right now where hopefully the weather's a little bit better. I don't know if it will be guaranteed as they take on the Titans this weekend, but did score a touchdown last week in bad weather against the 49ers. Shedeur Sanders is going to start again. Right now, this is a guy that Sanders is leaning on. So you get the floor of 8 or more PPR points, the potential of maybe 11 or more, which he's done in 2 of his last 4 games. So hopefully we could see Harold Fannin find the end zone in this matchup. But tight end is great right now. Wide receiver is great. And just keep in mind, Dave, I'm sure you'll agree with this, that you don't necessarily have to just get a wide receiver to play in your flex spot. You can play 2 tight ends in your flex spot based on what we've seen this season. And we are looking again with 4 teams on a bye. There are some good players out there that could help you get into the playoffs this week and potentially help you in the stretch run, especially somebody like Mike Evans if he's out there on your waiver wire.
All right, guys, we appreciate it. I was literally adding names to the waiver wire as you were doing this segment. For more waiver wire talk, you can hear the guys on Fantasy Football Today. You can watch right now by scanning that QR code on your screen. We'll be right back.